The Amazon AI-pocalypse is coming. And in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about what that might inevitably look like, what it is, and what we can do about it. But first, what do I mean when I say Amazon AI-pocalypse? Now, everyone who follows this channel knows that I am very pro-AI. I'm not being anti-AI with this video. But there are a couple of things coming, and let's not delude ourselves by thinking that we can stop it, that have me perhaps a little bit worried and something I want to talk about. And recently, this kind of came to a head for me when I saw a brand new April Fool's Day article that kind of touched a nerve for a lot of authors. So let's look at it. This is the article here. Now, of course, this is an April Fool's joke, but the headline was Amazon unveils Kindle Weaver, the future of personalized reading. And the basic idea behind this April Fool's article is that Amazon's releasing this new feature that would allow readers to basically customize a book for themselves. So if we have a thing here that says Kindle subscribers can craft their own books tailored to their personal tastes. Kindle Weaver empowers users to order on-demand books with astonishing flexibility. Subscribers can select genres and subgenres, mimic their favorite author styles, draw upon existing literature, and specify preferences down to character names, locations, and historical periods. Even favorite tropes are on the menu. Romance readers can choose enemies to lovers or small town settings with a few clicks. So this is basically the idea. Now, of course, this is an April Fool's article, right? It's not true. It's not actually something that's happening right now. Kindle Weaver isn't a thing. And yet this one seemed to really touch a nerve because I saw it shared in a lot of author Facebook groups, and a lot of authors were losing their ever-loving minds about it. And I know this just by looking at the comments. About half of the comments were people taking it seriously and thinking that it was a real thing, and the other half were people telling those people that it was an April Fool's joke and they needed to calm down. But the problem is, I guarantee you this exact scenario is going to be happening in the very near future. I'd say within the next 1 to 3 years. And I'm just talking on Amazon. There are actually companies out there that are already doing this. For instance, I did a whole video about Inkit, a company that's basically doing a model that I think is actually probably the best way to go, where they have a human create an outline of a story, and then the human is compensated for that outline. And I believe they're compensated anytime someone downloads that outline and uses it. So it's the best way that I can think of for compensating a creator. And then the reader on their side, they pick certain things that they want to customize about the story. So for instance, they could choose a protagonist that maybe is a protagonist they'd like to see, maybe someone that's like them. They might be able to choose the mood or the genre or the style. I don't know exactly all the parameters, but Inkit basically made it possible so that a reader can take this outline of a story that was generated by a human, and then the AI actually writes the story based on that outline. This isn't something that is, I think, available to the public yet, but I know it's something that they are working on. And that's just Inkit. We also have other platforms like Novel AI and AI Dungeon, I believe that's what it's called, that allows you to basically have a choose your own adventure story using AI. It essentially becomes a video game, a text-based video game, very similar to the early text-based video games that we had, but on a much bigger, much far grander scale because we're using AI to do it. And I was talking to an author who I respect, and she was saying that, like, she agreed with me that this sort of thing is probably going to be happening in the future, which is why it's more important than ever to lobby for compensation, meaning compensation to authors for the use of their work in the training dataset of the model. And while I absolutely agree that there should be some kind of compensation available to authors, and in fact, Sam Altman also agreed on this. He mentioned it in a recent interview, and I think we're going to see compensation models appear over time. We need to be clear about what that could look like. Now, I think right now Inkit's approach is probably the best one, where a human has a particular story outline that they create, and then the variations on that outline can be whatever it needs to be based on the AI, but the human gets compensated for creating that outline and for the use of that outline. And I think likewise, if Amazon were to do something like this Kindle Weaver idea, it would need to be like, for instance, if you wanted to tailor a story based on somebody else's IP. So say I wanted to create a Harry Potter story that was tailored directly to me, there would need to be some kind of compensation to J.K. Rowling because that is obviously infringing on her copyright on the end user result. But what we can't do, because of just the way technology works, is we can't actually compensate people for every time the AI is used if that AI was trained on your books. So say AI is trained on my books, and I want to get like a minuscule amount of money every time that AI is used and is using my books. And it's just not the way AI works. AI takes a large database of things, gets trained on it, and essentially can discard those things straight away, which is why an AI model can be trained on terabytes of data, but can only be a couple of gigabytes large. It's not maintaining a large data set of your books. It's not the way it works. I can literally take some of these open source models, put them on my computer, turn off my internet access so I'm only using the resources on my computer, and use the AI models locally. You can't do that with any of the bigger models, but let's be real, these smaller models are up and coming, and they are becoming more and more common and more capable. At some point, these larger models that require you to be hooked up to the internet will not be necessary, and you'll be able to do all of the writing you want just from your own computer without any internet access whatsoever. And so the idea that we should be compensating people for the use of a model is it's just not the way it can work. There's no way that is enforceable, even to the smallest degree. Now, what we might be able to see is compensation based on the rights to use your work in a model, but likely the amount of compensation for that, to have the rights to train a model on your books, is likely to be so low, because keep in mind, these people are training these AI models on enormous billions of books worth of material, that at most you could maybe be compensated in the price of a book, basically. So if your book costs $5, then you'd earn $5 for the rights to use it on a model. And I think even that is asking a lot, because there are actually databases out there right now that are completely ethically sourced, that are completely sufficient, especially for some of these newer, smaller models, to train their books on. There are people willing to let their own books be used for free. I'm one of those people. I am happy to let my books be used as training data, because I know how the process works. I know nobody's going to be able to steal my books, and that it's just using the mathematics of my books. And anyway, I've talked too much about compensation here. That's a whole subject for another video. But basically, the idea is compensation is going to be a very difficult thing to figure out. The second thing that I noticed when looking at what other people were saying about this article is a lot of people were saying that this was some sort of dystopian nightmare. And honestly, when I try to think about this from a reader's perspective, I actually think readers would like this. Like, going through this and saying all of their favorite tropes would be that they could select which tropes they want. They could select what protagonist they want. I think readers would genuinely enjoy that. And I think it's dangerous to think about that as a dystopian future when it's something that services the readers, who really are the people that we're supposed to be caring about. It sounds a little bit too much like the many churches and organizations back when the printing press was first made available, who were against this idea of a printing press, because it basically took power away from their institutions. And we got to keep in mind, being an author and writing books is a privilege. It is a privilege that we have. So I really want to be careful when we label anything as dystopian or not something that we want, based purely on the fact that it's taking power away from us and putting it more in the hands of the reader. Because I think ultimately that is kind of the world we're going for, where the power is held by the masses. And I might be getting a little bit more philosophical there, but I think that is ultimately going to be a good thing in the long run, even if it takes a little bit of power away from authors. But some of you might be thinking, well, actually, that is putting the power more in Amazon's hands, and that is true to a certain extent. But at the same time, Amazon's not going to do anything that doesn't make them money, which means the power is actually in the consumer's hands to buy it. If the customers aren't buying it, if the readers aren't buying it, then Amazon has no power. And so the power is still really in the hands of the consumer. And you might also be thinking, well, the readers aren't going to do that because they hate AI as much as we do. Well, in fact, I don't think that's true. I have been very open with my readers about using AI in certain aspects of my work, and that none of them seem to care. I've had literally zero pushback on some of those things. And part of that's because I explain exactly how I use it, and I think most people are okay with the way that I use it. But I really think that it's really just a minority of authors and artists who are against AI, and the vast majority of regular people, and as well as the vast majority of authors and artists, are either in favor of AI or rather indifferent to it. It's just another thing. And as AI becomes integrated into our smartphones and our computers to a point that we can't even recognize what is AI and what isn't, this is only going to increase. And I think readers will genuinely like to be able to take a story and have it be a protagonist that's like them, or that is like what they would want to see, or has all of the tropes that are their favorite, and they can just keep creating books with all of those same tropes and maybe change it up now and then and see what that does. It makes it more of a game, which I think is something that readers will actually enjoy. So about this whole Kindle Weaver concept. Here on this channel, I generally teach authors how to use AI as a productivity tool, an enhancer to take that creativity that you already have and shine a magnifying glass on it so that it is genuinely better and you're able to do more of the things that you are good at and do less of the things that you are not good at, and have the AI sort of pick up the pieces. But I admit, this kind of scenario where a reader can generate whatever they want and there's really no more author involved is something that has concerned me for a little while. Not just from this article, because this is something I've been predicting for months now. Pretty much since AI became a thing, this I saw as the end goal of where AI could go and how that could potentially disrupt our industry. However, after having talked about this scenario for quite a while with a number of other authors, I actually think the fear over this scenario might be a little overblown, including my own. And I think there are some really good ways to basically shield ourselves from this eventuality and give us insurance so that we don't lose our livelihoods when this sort of scenario comes upon us. And it comes down to three big things. The first, and probably the most important, is that we cannot rely on Amazon. Let me say that again. Do not rely your entire business model on somebody else's business, whether that's Amazon or anybody else. We need to diversify our income. We need to be reaching readers directly. I've talked a lot about selling direct on this channel. It's not something that I've gone deep into yet, because I still have to set up my own store and everything. Once I do that, I'm sure I'll have more information to talk about here on the channel. I will link below to one of the courses out there that I think is probably the best course for learning how to sell direct and the good principles for doing that. But the important thing is that we need to be getting away from Amazon as our sole income producer. It's fine to be on Amazon. It's fine to have that as a source of revenue, but it shouldn't be 80–90% of our revenue, because if we're doing that, our business could fall apart at any moment. It has nothing to do with AI. Amazon could just shut things down, or they could make a change to their algorithm that totally wipes away everything, or they could block your account. This has happened many, many times. And so I cannot emphasize enough the importance of going direct, of diversifying, of finding other income sources that you can tie into your author business to make it work, because you're going to be much more stable in the long run if you do that. The second big thing is to build a fandom. Now, this is something that the more I talk to other authors about this, like Kindle Weaver type scenario, this was the thing that came up as something that AI is never really going to be able to do, and that is create a fandom, create a community. Think of Harry Potter. Think of Brandon Sanderson, his little shared universe that he has going on. Think of Stephen King as a brand. All of these people have established branding, and all of them have established fandoms. And we don't need to be Stephen King or J.K. Rowling to have success. All we need is 1,000 true fans. If you've read that article about 1,000 true fans, that will be enough to be able to make a living as an author. So all you need to do is work on building that community of 1,000 true fans, and doing that through a fandom, which is my favorite word for community that you would have to foster. If a reader simply used AI to create a tailor-made book for them, that's fine, but it's really just for them. That's not going to spread and create an entire fandom around that book that they had. And I suppose some readers could actually get entrepreneurial and start creating more books that are similar and actually create a whole universe about it and then sell those things. I'm sure things like that are possible, but at that point, the reader has transitioned not just from being a reader, but they are now an author as well and an entrepreneur. We need to be thinking like entrepreneurs, building that community, building that library, and everything that it needs to go into creating a fandom, even if it's a fandom of a couple hundred people, as opposed to millions of people that you might see around Brandon Sanderson or J.K. Rowling or whoever. Number 3, and this is another important one, is that authors need to embrace technology. Now, I know there are going to be probably some people that watch this who are not fans of AI. I strongly encourage you to learn about it, to get into it, to understand how it can help you in your process. We're not talking about completely writing entire books with the push of a button. That's not the way AI works. And please go look through my other videos to see more of the process. It's a productivity tool to make you at your best. Think of Ridley in the movie Aliens in that mech suit that she's on. Like, that is what a AI is. It's a mech suit for you, the author, to really shine in areas that you are already good at, as well as actually getting help and bringing up those areas that you are not so good at. And I read a book recently called, I believe it's From Trashman to Cashman, by Myron Golden, and he said one of the defining characteristics of people who are rich as opposed to people that are poor is that they are embracing technology. One of my biggest mentors, I guess you could call him, is Walt Disney. I look up to Walt Disney and everything that he did. Of course, he was flawed in a couple of ways, most of which was a product of the time that he grew up in. But he was a guy who embraced technology and how it could marry with storytelling. And that is really the approach that I'm trying to take with my writing and my author business. The more you embrace technology, the more things like this. If Amazon came out with a Kindle Weaver idea, you would not be a slave to the whims of the industry like that, because you would have a handle on the technology yourself and you would know how to use it, and you could possibly do it even better than what Amazon is doing itself. So those are the 3 things that you need to keep in mind if you want to future-proof your author career. Number 1, don't rely on Amazon. Number 2, create a fandom. And number 3, embrace technology. Finally, I'd like to say that even though this Kindle Weaver idea has had me worried for a long time, I actually think that the fear over it might be a little overblown. And the reason for that is, all of the things that I've talked about so far, right? We've talked about creating a community. That's something that AI can't really do. But I actually think in practice, in actuality, because this is coming, don't get me wrong, I think it will just be another option that readers and consumers have to tell themselves stories. We've seen in the 20th century alone, we've seen the rise of radio, film, television, audiobooks, and of course, video games, all of which are brand new forms of storytelling, comic books as well. Brand new forms of storytelling that did not exist before the 20th century, where all we had were pretty much books and live performances. And yet books are still around, theater is still around. None of these have completely replaced those forms of storytelling. They've just sort of come in and supplemented it as an additional form of storytelling. And in fact, the overall market for books in general has increased more recently, especially since the rise of the ebook and the audiobook. So to say that this sort of Amazon situation, if they were to create a Kindle Weaver-like tool that allowed readers to just create their own books and their own experiences, I really think that that would be just one of many storytelling options that people would pursue. It would not get the sort of mainstream adoption that books have had for centuries now. Even if it gets really wide mainstream adoption, like on the role of film, it's still not going to replace all of those other forms of storytelling that we still have. And in the interest of embracing technology, with AI and other technology that's coming up, it's becoming easier and easier to actually branch out into other forms of storytelling. So I think that we as authors should not be thinking just about writing books. We should be thinking about video games we could create based on our books, VR experiences, animation. A lot of these things are going to be very easy to do with the technologies that are emerging right now. This is why embracing technology is such a big deal. And it's something that I'm looking into. I'm currently starting to get into Unreal Engine, which is a gaming engine, but it's used a lot for even live productions and for animation and things like that. So I'm really interested in seeing how I can apply that to my author business to create an experience like another author simply can't do right now because the technology isn't quite there, or they aren't embracing technology enough to recognize the opportunity when it comes along. So if you keep all of this in mind, when the Amazon AI apocalypse does come, it's actually not probably going to be as bad as you think. Certainly not as bad as the extremist AI alarmists tend to make it out to be. Now, of course, if you want to learn more about AI, I have a whole video about how to start if you're getting into AI, where to even get started, what that even looks like, and how you can use it as a productivity tool to enhance your own creativity. With that, I'll put that video right here, and I'll see you in the next video.